Thanks for everybody for joining us today to this online session on engineering excellence. We will, as Fabian just mentioned, do a recording of this, and it will be available later, but I'd just like to inform you that if you're present and if you are asking a question later on, there is a chance that you will be recorded, so keep that in mind. When you have questions during the meeting, please use the chat. During the panel discussion, we will have hopefully ample opportunity to discuss with you personally. In the meantime, use the chat function and the raise your hand function if you have a quick question while we are going through the beginning and the first slides of presentation. And with no further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists of today. We have Werner Eckardt joining us today. Werner is the principal of Werner Eckardt Consulting. And we have Florian Reichle, the head of engineering excellence from Hella North America. Fabian Kork, chief executive officer of INVENSITY in Detroit. And myself, I am the head of engineering for Browser North America, and also very delighted to be the president of the German American Business Council in Michigan. And with that, I hand over to Werner, who can give a few words of introduction to himself.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Just maybe my background real quick. I have a German background. It's hard to miss since I've been in the US since 27 years, working for various companies, BDO, Siemens Management at the time, as well as Continental in the very end. I've been in various leadership positions, specifically here in the US, mostly working really on the instrumentation, head-up display, as well as radar development that Continental and Siemens at the time were doing. Was leading a large organization, engineering organization. We set it up very efficiently, effectively, and have been very successful. And I've left Continental in 2017 and started my own business.
Nice. And Florian, would you also like to give us a brief introduction of who you are?
Yes, so I started 2006 as an engineer in automotive. So my background is more as a computer science or computer engineer, and I switched to automotive because it is more amazing and exciting to develop cars instead of any web pages. So it was not so really satisfying work. So I started as a test engineer first, later I joined quality, then I was going up to functional safety, because I think going up, it's maybe the wrong term, but safety is in my perspective more important. I need to say it because now I'm also responsible for functional safety as well. And I started as a safety manager also for some companies before as a contractor. Then later I joined Hella as a safety assessor, and I was becoming also a project leader for the safety assessors in Germany in our global safety office. And 2017 I joined the US organization from Hella, so as a head of functional safety in the America and Mexico. And yeah, kind of this way I also were becoming head of engineering excellence. It was before PMT, process method and tools, but after reorganization of Hella Global Engineer Excellence, so PMT was becoming Engineer Excellence. So I'm now also as well responsible to do the rollout of our Engineer Excellence standards and approaches as well in the US and in Mexico.
Okay, and Fabian.
Yeah, Fabian, thank you. And Fabian Kork is my name. I'm with INVENSITY for over 12 years doing technology consultant, today as a managing consultant. I had the pleasure over the years to do a lot of projects in the automotive industry in Germany, in China, and in the US. I work out of downtown Detroit today, and did, besides high-tech project, also reorganizations projects for companies like Daimler or ZF. And that's why I like to talk about this topic about the responsibility of leadership and engineering management in the field of engineering excellence. I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Very well. And last but not least, myself, Arndt Herwig. I'm the head of engineering for Brose in North America and the Central Electronics department here. I've been with Brose a rather longish time, 21 years, the last 13 of which here in North America. I've always been in technical roles. Although I did study manufacturing engineering, I actually ended up in product development very much in the beginning of my career, and I like developing new products, and I've always stayed at what I started. And of course, engineering excellence plays a big role in that. So with that, we would like to kick our discussion today off with a brief introduction by our three panelists of what they understand engineering excellence to be and what they think is important about it. Fabian, if you want to start us off, please.
So engineering excellence, in my perspective, it's not a purpose by itself. The question is always, when have we achieved engineering excellence? And a good result is when we see that project teams in engineering, because a lot of engineering activities are organized in projects. Let's talk about projects a little bit. And when we see that teams are starting to be in control of the project, that means we are not running after information. We are not reacting to what we see in terms of incidents or issues. We are able to stay out of task force mode into engineering, and therefore we need to know what the critical tasks are today and tomorrow to be able to really plan and do the right things. And it has a lot to do with having the right methods and processes and tools in place. What is here called a clear information system about tasks and goals for the future, but also about where we are today. We can go to the next slide. What the first thing when I talk about excellence is awareness, understanding where we are today, and that is true in a project perspective, and that's why people talk today about data warehousing and dashboards. But we can take that to a very personal level, because in the end, excellence can just be achieved by the different team members, the members of the organization, the individual engineers. And I think there are a lot of different areas of excellence where we can support our team members to grow in the areas of personal excellence, areas of social competence, and then for sure, especially in engineering, the technical knowledge and the methodology skills. And on the leadership side, it's even more important over time when we step up in an engineering management role and in a director role to say, okay, how much do we do in these areas of pathfinding, of modeling of an organization, of empowerment and alignment? And to measure that for ourselves is important, and to bring these concepts in. And then we can go to the next slide. To say, how do we build this up over time? First of all, it's a commitment, and what you see here is a draft structure of how to build an engineering qualification program, coming from a clear claim. Here in this example, and every organization is different, but for example, a very general claim for an engineering organization is that not everything works perfect all the time, but we commit to deliver the planned quality with known deviations in time. There might be something that comes up, but we have it under control. And then to break that down into what needs to be delivered, what are key work products, what are roles in our engineering organization that support that, and then define a clear qualification program in terms of to give everybody the chance to uphold responsibility, authority, and to execute the necessary tests. And I think that's something very important, that not the same amount and the same activities need to be enabled for every individual role, but especially when we talk about engineering qualification, that we adjust the right doses. So we just bring the necessary qualification in the beginning to the specific role owner. And so a system lead needs a little bit of different skill set than a software lead, than a hardware lead, than a quality engineer. And to qualify all of them with the same concept, I think is not the right approach. And there we already see, when I talked about engineering leadership in prior, someone has to kind of model that, has to tailor that to really bring the empowerment, bring the enablement to the individual roles. We can go in the next slide. And sometimes there are simple concepts. And not just sometimes, it always starts with simple concepts. We in our organization for the clients, we teach a few of them. And one example is something you can see here. It looks like a project management lifecycle, but it's a little bit different. It's a very individual, one example of empowerment. It's a professional work cycle that works very well in engineering. In engineering, we deal with a very normally complex context. So, and a good approach is to always analyze, be aware, recognize where we are and what needs to happen, and then plan, produce, and review. That seems pretty obvious. Things that help tremendous in the acceleration of our activities is the moment where we share things. After an analysis, normally there's not just one answer to the story. There are different options. And we as individuals are sometimes not even the best decision maker. We know the options after our analysis, but it's important to push it out. That's why you see here an option report. And after planning, we say, okay, we push out a priority report to give others that surround us, other stakeholders, the ability to influence us. No? And that helps. If we establish these rhythms of focus work in the field of analysis, planning, production, delivery, review and issue resolution, but also establish clear traditions and mechanisms to interact with the outside, I think is crucial. Let's go one step further. We'll go a little bit into the complex part of things, and there's a lot on the slide, and I will not go into details. But what we see here are two things, and that is it's maybe special for this really concept development in mechatronic systems, in the automotive industry or in other industries, where we have design engineers that are taking care of design. That's the top right side, and there are very different techniques and methods. From a P diagram over functional modes, over system architectures, over different design techniques. And on the lower side, we have something that comes out, hopefully, out of this design activities. This is requirements and specification and parameters. If we organize an organization, we run an organization, there are so many options around it. So it's important for us to a little bit define, okay, for our organization, this is what we need. We will not do a context diagram. We will not do a use case diagram. We will do a P diagram to define something as leaders for the organization, for our colleagues, what to focus on and what to do in this project, while being 100% open for new ideas and encouraging everyone to speak up. Is that the P diagram will not do it in this project, and that's why we should do something different. And I think that's important, kind of clear guidance, setting the focus with complete openness for improvement. And that was already kind of my input from my side, and I hand it over to the next speaker.
Okay, so I don't want to repeat what Fabian was telling. So yes, he presented a lot of details and information already, and honestly, I have not a different view, but my focus here on this slides will be more to know or to understand what is really the goal of engineering excellence, why we like to do engineering excellence, why is this important, and it's a kind of a mindset. I like to compare it also with a functional safety and the safety culture in a company. it's not just only you want to start with safe products, you need first to establish an environment where people are starting with the right mindset. The same is for engineer excellence. If you like to start with engineer excellence, you need to understand what is really your goal and why you need to do engineer excellence. There are a big difference between different companies. There are different approaches which can taken by the company. There are different options on your way, how you can resolve might be some issues in your environment to become more excellent in your development. Because it's not only about tools or methods and so on, it's really the kind of culture, what you have in your whole company, in your environment, to first to excite people about the idea, to amaze people, also to be ready for changes, for improvements, to become more efficient, to might be also to have less frustration in your projects, because you might be fighting with a lot of issues, with a lot of obstacles during your development, during daily work. Some people are complaining about they have no transparency. All these kind of goals, what you want to set up to improve your organization, are really important. And therefore, it's not about keywords or definitions or interpretations. First, you need to focus what are your goals, how you want to achieve the goals, what is your way, and what is right now already your culture in the company itself. Do you have already a kind of mindset that people are willing to change and to improve? Or are you doing things like you did things already science 20 years ago? So then you have two ways. So the one is really the hard way, and another one is really easy. If you have a really good culture, you have already this kind of setup, you have a really kind of a dynamic HR environment, it's pretty easy. If you have a kind of a company where you're doing things like I already explained, science 20 years in the same way, it's really hard to convince people. But this needs to start from the upper management. This needs to start in the whole organization and the environment. And that's also how you can amaze people about this idea. It's like, it's not only about innovative products. So this is the reason why I have this one big conclusion. The people should be also proud how they are doing projects, because it's not at the end that you have a ready product and it's innovative, it's awesome, but it maybe took you 20 years until you get the next innovative idea. It will take until again 20 years. No, you want to be amazed also, hey, we did it really fast in a high quality and high efficient way, and I was not frustrated because we had all the information right in place, we had the right tools. I could focus on my engineering topics. I could focus really on my daily work. I was not stopped by any kind of boring management meetings or something like this. So the engineering guy also became really happy in his environment. And this is also driving some innovations. This is driving also some improvements. Then at one point, it is a self-running topic. So if you have this kind of mindset, and that's pretty important. Thanks for the next slide. Okay, so these questions are not coming from myself, but I found it in the internet, and it's explaining a lot of good examples how you can start to look in your organization and how you want to identify if your organization already has a good engineering culture. Because what is the idea of engineering excellence? To improve your engineering culture and your whole environment. So you need to go through some specific topics. So are you innovative? Are you following some industrial trends? Do you know how you can identify the industrial trends? How is your technical knowledge? Those kind of keywords you need to go through, look in your departments, looking in your teams, looking in your whole organization, going through the different questions. Are you agile? Are you open to topics? Are you open to changes? How are the teams? Are they willing to be open? Are you transparent? Are you diverse? Because diversity is also a really important topic. It's not about only to have a good homogeneous team in once. No, you need also people with a different mindsets, also might be also different culture and so on. Everything is helpful, which is driving new ideas and which makes you more innovative. Are you good? So this means also, what is your goal? What is your ethnic culture as a company? That's also pretty important. Are you social? Are the people around in your area, are they feeling good? Feeling they kind of social responsibility? Are they happy with the daily work? Feeling the pressure, frustration, or something like this? Those are really important questions. So As I said, there's not one approach, there's not one method. But at one point you need to start with the analysis. What is your engineering culture? Then it's pretty important to break it down and make it in a more structured, systematic way, like Fabian was showing before in his presentation. But at one point you need to start. Mostly it's like with this kind of simple questions. So the next slide, please. So this is just a quick example. What we are doing right now at Hella is not really sophisticated, but we have a consulting group. Those are the experts regarding new ideas, innovative trends, and they listening to the internal organization, and in this case, customer group, are our own project teams. They can come up with new ideas and come up also with issues. And also we have the corporate network between the different departments, different innovative centers, what we have, also different companies in our network. And also as well, we are looking in industry trends to see, okay, what is new on the market? What might be is the trend in 5 years and 10 years? What kind of new technologies are coming up, not only on the innovative products, also on the development side. So that's pretty important. So consulting is looking at the ideas and evaluating the ideas, justify, okay, how we can drive new ideas and push this to solutions. Solutions has then the big challenge, how we can bring this in the company as a method or as a tool or as a new solution. And the delivery team is doing the rollout. Okay, so then I can give over to Werner.
Thank you very much, Werner.
Okay, thank you, Florian. I can talk about this for hours, if not days. Okay, so you have to slow me down there eventually. And I I know I'm throwing a pretty complicated slide here at you, but and I'm going to go through this hopefully relatively quickly. But when it comes to engineering excellence, it really starts with the leadership. If the leadership is not driving this, it's not going to go anywhere. So for a good engineering department or organization or whatever you want to call it, you need to have a clear mission. You need to have an understanding of what is really your business, what are your boundaries, what is your mission, what do you want to achieve, and you need to develop a strategy in terms of how you want to get there in an excellent way. Right. So looking at this particular slide, I'm actually going to start in a very unlikely area, which is actually the lessons learned and design guidelines. And I'll come back to this. So a good, excellent engineering organization actually has lessons learned guidelines, really has documents that are continuously updated and maintained. There is a consistent flow of patterns that are eventually being created, because once you have those challenges in the engineering world, you really should have also the time to eventually apply for the appropriate intellectual property. So Fabian talked quite a bit about employee training. I don't want to go into details there. There's plenty of tools, processes, methods, and so forth. But what's also important, and that's just the normal thing, is obviously the employee attitude and motivation. Attitude and motivation is important. Florian talked a little bit about people that have been in a company for a long time and they have been doing things in a certain way, and this is how it's done in our company. That can be a very, very negative attitude. Sometimes change is needed. But when it comes to the selection of employees, obviously, it's important that we pick the right employees with the right motivation, and then, of course, create team building events, career development is important, and so forth. Compensation. To me, compensation is also very important, and it is important that we do recognize what those individual engineers are eventually delivering. I've always said that eventually between a good engineer and a bad engineer, there is easily a performance factor of 4. Okay, so the good engineer really does basically deliver 4 times as much valuable work than the kind of the slacker or whatever you want to call it. Now that's typically not awarded in monetary sense, But what we really should be looking at is if there is the capability of actually awarding bonuses that really make sense based on personal individual goals that are driven by a strategy. Management is important, of course. Management needs to understand the needs, demands solutions, but also provides the tools and the training, basically the budget in the very end. Regular reviews are important, and the one-on-ones, sometimes the project reviews, I'm sure you have that in most organizations where this is regularly established. But if it doesn't really happen, if the improvement reviews, for example, in an organization don't happen on a regular basis, it's actually going to be lame if you roll out certain things and you actually never really ask for a proper feedback. Facilities. My next slide is actually going to go as an example into this a little bit further, so I'm going to skip that. And then last but not least, the organization itself, a clear responsibility, clear structure, clear reporting. Very, very important. I've seen organizations that actually are not clear in this regard. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Facilities. I wanted to talk about that a little bit as an example. And of course, nowadays, facilities, what is that? But in many cases, it's really shops, labs, testing capabilities, and test organizations that we eventually have. So next click, please. So when I break it down, when I break down engineering or development, if you will, I always say it in very simple terms. You can give me very, very complicated slides, but I always break it down to this little thing here that you see there. It's designing something, it's building something, and it's testing something. And you go in circles in many cases, which is an optimization circle, right? If you are lucky, and if you are a very well established organization, you can go from design, build, and test and launch, okay? But then you really have everything under control very solidly. If you have advanced development or new products, you're probably going to go in this particular circle a few times, depending on where you are, okay? So this cycle, this cycle that we have there, for an efficient, agile organization, it says it right there in the word, agile. It needs to be quick. And in many organizations, this quick does not exist, I'm telling you. So let's go to the next click, please. So here we have ASPICE. I'm not sure, I don't want to go too much into ASPICE, but ASPICE defines, automotive SPICE defines, coming from the software side really, defines nowadays how we are supposed to work in engineering, okay? But something is actually missing. And when you look at this, on the left side, we have the design side, on the right side, we have the test side. And missing is, if you go to the next click, is the build. So we sometimes really don't really recognize that there is a build, and you can't test what you haven't built. Right? So why is it missing in the ASPICE process? That's my assumption. If you go to the next click, please, the software world that has SPICE is software process improvement capability determination. Okay, but this in the software side, the build is easy in many cases. I don't want to make it too easy, but it's running on a computer, right? So it can be done in maybe hours or the least days, maybe minutes even. So the build is relatively quick, but not so in the electrical and mechanical world. So if you go to the next click, please. There for the mechanical and electrical work, we really need labs, we really need prototype shops, extended workbenches, test facilities. And unfortunately, as you can see on those little pictures there, they are expensive, I can tell you. But if you don't have the build and the test as quick as something that you can do quickly in the lab or in your prototype shop, this agile process of going through design, build, and testing is going to slow down tremendously. So the next click, please. So how does the real world look like? This is really something that you have to answer for yourself in your own organization, whether you are agile, whether you are quick, whether you can react quickly, whether you have the fundamentals in place for making sure that your leadership really has a clear mission and a strategy on how to implement excellence in engineering. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we are going to move on to a little panel discussion. And I just want to reiterate, please feel free to add your questions to the chat or raise your hand. And I think, Fabian, you could also unmute somebody if somebody wants to ask a question personally.
Sure, I can do that.
So this starting and kicking us off in the panel discussion, a very basic question. Why is the goal of engineering excellence actually beneficial for our business or for your business? And maybe, Florian, do you want to give a perspective on that?
I can give a short hands up on this. At the beginning, why you need to do engineering excellence is to improve, of course, your environment, as we already discussed before. So why you need to do this? So you want to save costs, effort, and maybe you want to increase your quality. So at the end, the benefits, there are different points what you can put on the list where you can get a lot of benefits. So you mostly, for the company itself, it will be really cost, time, quality, always the three most important topics. Mm-hmm. But Werner is also smiling. I know you want to add something.
I can only second this. I mean, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Fabian, do you want to add a perspective to that? You've, in your consulting role, seen many different companies doing it and implementing it differently.
I think it's interesting to see what happens if, let's say, the mechanisms of at least striving for excellence are not in place. I see often, and that's why these patterns repeat, if we are not putting the right methods in place to do good engineering on the design side, on the build side, and on the test side, and I second absolutely what Werner says, then we have overpaid, in quotation marks, overpaid engineering staff running behind vehicles, hunting ghosts and issues, rather than having them productive, developing the innovative feature, developing the value that makes in the end the difference in the market. We're having them running behind the machinery, the prototypes, and that's the effect that we see, and maybe some here, some attendees here and the presenters have seen it from their own experience. So we afterwards, we know if we have invested enough in excellence to avoid this redundant effort or let's say low value effort of troubleshooting and running behind prototypes. Absolutely.
Thank you. And we have a question from the audience for Werner. So the optimization of the build cycle, time is an additional cost as well as the tooling is. Do you believe it is possible to optimize the build process with Agile?
Absolutely, absolutely. I tell you this, the build process itself needs to be fast, and the thing that's really important is that the organization, the development organization, has the prototyping. Whatever the prototyping is, whether it's on the software side, whether it's on the electrical side or the hardware side, on the system side, that you can react quickly. So before you go into a project, you need to have your ducks in a row, right? When I was leading my organization that I was leading, and we had urgent activities. Urgent activities were mostly really quotation activities, because quotes, there you need to be quick and you need to know exactly what you're offering, right? But when it came down to prototype builds and we developed timing, for me, it was never a question about, when it comes to the when. By when do you have something available? By when are you ready? When we defined the when, it was in hours, okay? We did not discuss, can you get this done tomorrow? Can you get it done by next week? It was by what time tomorrow? Can you get this done by noon? Can you get this done by 3 o'clock in the afternoon? But you have to have your organization lined up to really be able to do this. So the machinery has to be there, the extended workbenches have to be there, things along those lines. Absolutely, can be done. Prototyping, yes.
I can only second that from my personal experience. That's something that we, let's say, more classical, traditional supply companies in the automotive have learned from startup companies from the Silicon Valley and elsewhere, to build prototypes very early prototype, fast as possible, find your mistakes early and learn them and implement that. And that speeds up the whole process.
Yeah.
Let me go on in our discussion with the next question, which is engineering excellence. We have so many requirements. We have laws to begin with, rules in engineering. We have standards. We're being audited against those standards, whether it's ISO or IATF regularly. So isn't engineering excellence actually something that we're already doing every day? Do we need to call it out this way? Fabian, do you want to give us a perspective on this one?
Yeah, I think in every organization, we want to comply to certain standards, no matter what is the organization where these standards are coming from, ISO, VDA, IATF or others. I think that's, and these standards give us a backbone of different work products, what is expected from us as deliverables, maybe as a release documentation of a product. And in often cases, we have good support. We have some tools, some CAE tools in place to support our engineering activities. I think where we are struggling, where a lot of organizations are struggling, is on this method layer. I think Florian already said PMT, process, methods, and tools. I think sometimes there are tools existing that might be aligned or might support the processes. Maybe sometimes they don't, but whereas it's really difficult and where engineering leadership is necessary is in the selection of methodology. Werner said guidelines. We need engineering guidelines, and I think these guidelines. This is this middle ground where we have to make a decision. So this is the approach. This is the methodology where how we design, build, and test things. And it needs to be hands-on, and I think that is important to give guidance and evolve these methods. The outside standards in ISO and IATF or VDA will not give us that kind of guidance.
Okay, Werner, I think you mentioned that the leadership in a company has to be on board. So is there anything that you want to add from your side to Florian's statement?
I don't want to say the leadership has to be on board. This is too weak for me. The leadership has to be absolutely convinced and driving this hard. Okay, so just being on board, no, that's not good enough. Yeah, that's what I see.
Okay, and the question to Florian, which is, you're basically doing engineering excellence as your full-time job. Is it expensive? And what is the payback for a company in doing that?
I'm not expensive, no. Just kidding. The payback is what we already discussed. If you're starting with engineering excellence, it will be always a payback. You have the improvement in your whole organization regarding the cost, the time, the effort, and the quality, of course. And of course, you need to have full-time resources who are working in specific topics to support the teams. So, of course, if you have a good organization which has already a good mindset with a continuous improvement, you have always this kind of mindset to improve your organization by the team members itself. Okay, awesome. Might be your organization don't need to have an additional engineering excellence organization, but especially in bigger companies with a bigger size of team members and so on, it becomes more complicated, and you need to come up with some standards. You need also to have the right mindset in place and to take care that the mindset will be also rolled out, because it doesn't help if you have somebody who's sitting somewhere else, one guy and he's saying, okay, we need to do engineering excellence, I'm responsible for this, and nobody's listening to him. So this is also what Werner was mentioning. So first, it needs to come from the management. Management needs to be convinced. Management needs to be also convinced, okay, we need to spend money in the first beginning, and it will take some time until we're getting the first benefit out of this, because it depends to the company, to the culture, the engineering culture of the company, how fast you can change this mindset. Or maybe you have already the mindset in place, but the people are just doing some wrong things because they don't know better. For example, we had some situations where we are using some tools which were pretty good, but the people didn't know how they need to use the tools. They were willing to use the tools, but they were totally blocked by just about the knowledge of the skill sets of the tools, how they can use the tools in a proper way. And after the right training, and always, that's also an important point, you need to refresh, because sometimes you're using some tools for some time, then for next 3-6 months, you are coming in a different project phase and you don't need the tool anymore. And then you need to go back to the tool, and then, oh, snap, so I forgot how I need to click here on something. There's always coaching important, and you need to have this kind of backbone in your organization to support the engineer that he is not feeling lost.
So Florian, you've talked about initiatives and tools and training. That's a good segue into our next point, and I want to ask Werner the question, isn't engineering excellence and the initiatives around it stressful for the people in an organization?
Personally, I don't think so. And the reason why I say that is because I highlighted it very clearly in my presentation that there has to be a clear vision and a strategy from management developed hopefully together with a team on how to approach this, how to really approach this. And once they see that, and they see who is going to do what in the organization to improve the overall organization, to get better, to become an excellent engineering organization, it is actually very rewarding, I think, for the people, for the engineers to be part of that. So stressful, I don't think so. Maybe there is a little bit of work here and there, but that goes above and beyond, or some additional training that goes above and beyond. But I think in the very end, when the organization sees, or the engineers see what the goal is of all of this, they are actually very supportive. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's a good point. And maybe spinning that around in a different way, can we achieve engineering excellence just by hiring the right people? By hiring somebody who is an excellent engineer, is that enough? And the question goes to all the panelists.
No, clearly not. No. So, sorry when I chime in right away, but it's clearly not. It's really just hiring excellent engineers. If they end up in an organization that's just, sorry when I say it like this, messed up, they will not stay for long. They unless they are in a leadership position and they can actually change it and make a real impact, they'll walk away because they find better organizations. That's my opinion. Yeah.
I agree to that. But I think on the leadership side, definitely. I mean, if I would build a complete an organization from scratch, let's assume someone does a spin-off and said it has a good funding, but we have the opportunity to build an engineering organization from scratch. To look for these leaders who believe in the principles of excellence and in continuous improvement and have the drive to find the right methods, to find the right process, find the right tools, and still have what we talked about earlier, agile and lean background, and said, okay, let's not just do things that really make sense and really produce value. And then that combined with maybe a bonus benefit program that does not give short-term incentive, that really gives an incentive to say, hey, you get a bonus when we are staying outside of task force modes and troubleshooting in the end, and not when we manage to achieve gate number 1, 2, 3. I think that is on the leadership side. But in many cases we have legacy, and that's why we have to invest in the colleagues that we have, rather than just going around and always trying to find a better unicorn out there, a better hero.
So I think we've heard, and all panelists agree, that leadership is what drives engineering excellence in an organization. So is it necessary to have somebody in an organization like a chief engineering executive officer, or a real organization that stands behind engineering excellence?
It's a case-to-case decision, I guess. So as if you really need somebody on the top, or if you have the management who is already supporting, the whole leadership is already supporting the engineering excellence, you don't need to have a CTO or something like this. But maybe it's helpful to have an organization, but it depends to the company, and you need to find something which is suiting to your company. So I guess, Fabian, with your consulting experience, you know as a best how this is sometimes difficult just to make a general statement here.
I think it's in the beginning also a logistics question. Even when you have an established team that is responsible for excellence, and there's maybe one is for production excellence, and one is for engineering excellence, and one is for whatever logistics. But this organization in the end needs also a budget, and a lot of engineering activities are financed by development programs. That means the budgets are defined in the beginning, and as we've seen and we've discussed, the problem of not achieving excellence is coming at the end of the project. Means the only way to establish excellence is that, okay, I have maybe an officer, but I also give that officer a certain amount of budget, because I analyze based on lessons learned, what Werner said in the beginning, what was not so perfect in the last project, and all the lessons learned points should become excellence, add-on excellence topics for the next project. And I think these points of excellence need budget in the engineering programs. And if I don't have an organization that gets allocated in a budget, if I don't have an organization that participates in this budgeting rounds, in the RFQs on the tier 1 supplier side or on the OEM side in the general vehicle program budgeting discussion, I think it will not happen. I think I have maybe some support structures, but if I don't have a part of our organization that has to go and is paid for achieving excellence with budget and resources, and they have to report inside this project, it will not happen.
So again, through your consulting experience, can you give us a few examples how that looks like, how companies anchor engineering excellence in their organization?
Yes, no, absolutely. So I think a lot of companies have already established a very good lessons learned activity. The problem is if lessons learned, and Werner said it, has no internal customer, so no one picks it up. It just sits there on a lessons learned table, and on the way maybe a good project manager will look into this, maybe not. It's not assured. So it's really, I think it's closing the cycle over different programs and projects, and having someone responsible that out of every lessons learned, there's a defined activity, and especially in the field of methodology, and that is then budgeted and requested for. The best way to do it, every organization has a stage gate process. And one early gate is often the project definition, no? Or project initiation, or project announcement, or whatever, a sponsorship gate. And to establish that as a checkpoint already at that point, and not just saying, okay, yes, we looked into lessons learned from other projects, but say we defined activities and they are scheduled and budgeted and allocated. I think that's the key.
Okay.
I need to agree. Sorry, I need to add here something, because this was one of the biggest mistakes by Haller as an organization, as a company in the past regarding engineering excellence, because the project needed to pay for engineering excellence activities in the past. So guess what happened? So no project wanted to pay for this. So engineering excellence organization had no budget. So we were fighting to get an independent budget, independent from the projects, like Fabian was mentioning, that their own organization of engineering excellence has their own budget allocated. And that's really pretty important to be independent from this. And it was a big mistake because at the beginning, it was not possible to change the mindset. It was not possible to ramp up engineering excellence with this kind of approach. And there was no backup by the top management because there was no need, or they didn't see the need to give you an own budget.
Thank you. Interesting perspective. So as we are nearing the last 5 minutes of our conversation, I would just reiterate to the audience, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I think we will still have the possibility to answer them. So maybe another one to Werner. So you mentioned methods, a strong process. Is that the right way to support engineering in your organization?
A strong process, is that a good? So of course we have to have processes, right? But when it comes to processes themselves, I think it is utmost important that we consider those processes to be things that are also improved eventually. So a process that was established maybe 5 years ago doesn't necessarily need satisfy the needs of today's or future projects. So yes, solid processes are important. Yes, processes need improvement on a regular basis. You can maybe say you look at a process once a year and look at it and say, okay, what needs to be changed inside a process? Yes, solid processes, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. So I think we're having about 3 minutes left. I would like our panelists to give their very short and concise final statement on what engineering excellence is for them before we close this session. Fabian, would you start us off, please?
Engineering excellence is understanding what provides value and where is risk coming from in the fields of quality, time and costs, and defining the right methodologies before you start the project.
Florian, would you like to add to that?
I have already a conclusion on my presentation. It's not about to get an innovative product, it's how you want to do the projects.
Perfect. And Werner?
Well, in the very end, it's always what comes out the door. It's the product that leaves the factory. And this factory should have only one single direction. It should go to the customer and never come back.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always good when your customer comes back and not the product comes back.
Right.
Right. So with that, I would like to thank our 3 panelists for today and for the preparation. I thought it was an excellent discussion. Thank you, Fabian, for organizing this. Thank you, Florian. Thank you, Werner. And please, to the audience, go to our website. We are announcing new events that are coming up. There will be another virtual event in about 4 weeks. So keep a lookout for that. I hope this added some information to your day today. And I hope that everybody enjoyed the meeting, the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arndt, for moderating, and also to the audience. We have recorded this. We will, after editing, we will share that with maybe attendees that had not so much time today on a busy snow day.
Right.
Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.